Hey YouTube, today we're going to have a little bit of fun and talk about a cartridge that I like a lot. So I'm going to do a few videos here and go over some of my favorite cartridges, caliber sizes, and today's topic is going to be the 357 Magnum. And what we have here, we have a 357 Magnum cartridge that I was going to show. And this one just happens to be a regular square nose 158 grain normal common 357 Magnum cartridge. And before we go any further, I'm going to tell you that every single one of these weapons that I have here on this table in front of you have all been safety checked. And I'm not going to go through and individually safety check them and burn through people's time showing you this. I safety checked every one of them, and before I pick them up, if I pick any of these up during this video, I'll show you that it's not loaded. But anyway, folks, the 357 Magnum is a really neat cartridge. It was developed in 1935. That's when it was released to the public. And the gentleman that it slips my mind right now, his name, that developed the 357 Magnum cartridge actually worked for Smith & Wesson and Winchester. But he developed the 357 Magnum for Smith & Wesson. So we credit Smith & Wesson for releasing the very first 357 Magnum handgun. And the one that they released was called the Registered Magnum. And that's before Smith & Wesson started assigning model numbers to their guns. And the Registered Magnum was a really awesome gun. It was a hand-built, very high quality, just probably the best one that they ever made. And it had a beautiful blue finish on it. It was a large frame revolver, kind of like the 629 and Model 29s have today, the 44 Magnums. And just a spectacular gun. And you could literally custom order it like you would custom 1911 from like a Les Baer or a Wilson Combat or something like that today. You can get any barrel length you want. You can change the grips and all kind of stuff. It was a really neat concept. But I'm going to pick this gun up here. This is a Smith & Wesson 586, and it is not loaded. And it looked very similar to this, except for it was a larger frame. It had the same kind of lustrous blued finish on it, and just a really awesome gun. I know this isn't a Model 27, folks. I understand that. Every one of these revolvers I have here are all medium frame, and the original Model 27 or Registered Magnum was a large frame. But this is just an example we're using. This is a Smith & Wesson gun, and Smith & Wesson's the one that came out with it. If you look at some of these signs on the side of this, it says Smith & Wesson on one side, and on the other side, see if we can get it focused, it says Smith & Wesson 357 Magnum. Now keep that in mind when we're going down the road here talking about it. So Smith & Wesson in 1935 is the one 100% responsible for introducing the 357 Magnum. And some of the examples I have here in front of you, I have 4 Smith & Wesson 357 Magnums, and I'll name what they are. This is a 586 6-inch 357 Magnum Smith & Wesson. This is Smith & Wesson 686 6-inch stainless 357 Magnum. This is a 4-inch 586 blued 357 Magnum Smith & Wesson. And this is a Smith & Wesson 686 4-inch stainless 357 Magnums. So if it wasn't for Smith & Wesson, none of these guns would exist. You wouldn't have any 357 Magnums. And generally speaking, this 357 Magnum cartridge is shot out of revolvers. Now, I know there's a few examples out there, like there's a Coonan that's similar to a 1911 that shoots a 357 Magnum, and you can also get a Desert Eagle that shoots them. But generally speaking, folks, that's what we're doing here. We're generally speaking, the 357 Magnum was designed to be shot out of a revolver. And the reason it was developed is before that, they had 38 long Colts and they had 38 specials. And during the 1930s, there was a lot of bootlegging going on, a lot of gangsters, your Al Capones and your John Dillingers, Bonnie and Clydes, and stuff like that. And they wanted to develop, law enforcement stuff wanted to develop a cartridge that would pierce through a car door and, injure the drivers and stuff. They were using to combat the criminals. So Smith & Wesson came up with the 357 Magnum. They hired somebody to develop what they call the 357 Magnum. And the only difference in a 38 Special and a 357 Magnum is merely the length of the case. What people don't understand is the bullet size is exactly the same diameter and exactly the same. And every one of these revolvers here will shoot 38 Specials. 38 Special is nowhere near the velocity or the power of a 357 Magnum. 38 Special is a lot more pleasant to shoot, and a lot of people that own 357 Magnum revolvers shoot 38 Specials out of it when they're going to the range. It's a lot cheaper, and it's a lot easier on your wrist, and it's actually a lot easier on the firearm because it is a pretty powerful round. Now, generally speaking, when you have a 357 Magnum, and this is generally speaking, folks, I'm not a scientist and I'm not a historian, and if I mess things up, I'm just doing this for fun to give you a little fun facts about the 357 Magnum cartridge. Generally speaking, when fired out of a revolver, a handgun, depending on which load you have and which brand of ammunition you have, you can expect to get between 1,200 and 1,600 feet per second out of one of these rounds, and that is moving, folks. That is a powerful round. And if you ever shot a 357 Magnum and then shot a 38 Special, it is night and day difference. There's a big power difference. There's a big recoil difference. A 357 Magnum is a powerful round. Now, moving down the road, Smith & Wesson was making their 357 Magnums, for, probably 20 years or so. And then up came the 1950s, and the famous Colt, which is the reason why the 357 Magnum even exists, because Colt had came out at the same time with what they called the 38 Super. It was like a bottleneck automatic gun that would pierce the car doors and stuff. And Smith & Wesson made this 357 Magnum to shoot out of a revolver. Now Colt decided they were going to get into the 357 Magnum game, and I can't do this video without mentioning probably the most famous 357 Magnum on this table, and that was the Colt Python. And this is an original Colt Python. This one was made in the 80s. This is a stainless one. But if you look at the roll marks on this, and I have two of them on here for a reason. If you look at the roll marks on here, it says Python 357 Magnum cartridge. And a lot of people don't understand why underneath there it says 357 Magnum cartridge. And I told you to remember that earlier in the videos. The reason being is Smith & Wesson had a patent on the 357 Magnum. And Colt could not put 357 Magnum on their firearms, so they had to add the word cartridge to the side of it, because that was a Smith & Wesson thing, and Colt, if they wanted to make it, they had to change the wording on them, so they put 357 Magnum cartridge. Now, Colt and Smith & Wesson have always been rivals since day one, and whatever they do, they're always rivals, and one of them's always trying to outdo the other, and there's always going to be this controversy between gun enthusiasts, which one's better. And I've done numerous videos on comparing Colt revolvers and Smith & Wesson revolvers, and that's not what this is about. This is about the cartridges. So if you look on the side of a Smith & Wesson revolver, and this is an older one too, it says Smith & Wesson 357 Magnum. There's no cartridge or anything written on it. But these both were made around the same time. The one I just showed you in this one was made in the 82. This one says 357 Magnum cartridge, CTG. It has the little stars around it. So if anybody ever wondered why a Colt Python says 357 Magnum cartridge, you can say you learned it here, folks. Now, moving on down the road into modern times here, Colt stopped making this Colt Python, because this Colt Python was probably the most famous 357 Magnum ever made, and this thing was all hand fit, and everybody knows about all the action work and the hand work that went into these, and they were super expensive. They cost a lot more than a Smith & Wesson. Well, the demand went down, and Colt decided to do a few things, and I have videos on that also about the Colt firearm history. They just stopped making these altogether, so they went away, and Colt got out of the revolver game altogether. Well, fast forward to the year 2020, after phone calls and customers yelling and screaming and causing temper tantrums, they came back out with the new Colt Pythons in the year 2020. I'm going to show you this one isn't loaded. So this is a newer model. This is a new release, Colt Python, made in the year 2020. And the reason I have this one out here is I want you to look real close at the markings on the side of the barrel. It says Python 357 Magnum. There is no more longer written the cartridge after the word Magnum. And the reason being is now they can do that because all the patents have run out and everything. So Colt can now put whatever they want on there, and so can everybody else. If you look at this one more time, we're going to compare. It says 357 Magnum cartridge underneath the Python 357. Very famous roll mark on a very famous gun. And the new ones, that's one of the differences in them. You look underneath there, it says 357 Magnum, and it's not written on there. A lot of people don't notice stuff like that, but I always notice the small things and stuff. But anyway, Smith & Wesson was 100% the reason why all these guns exist, folks. And it's been going on since 1935. The 357 Magnum cartridge has been a duty cartridge for a lot of law enforcement over the years when the revolver thing was hot, before the automatics really got going on. It's been used in target shooting. If you look at these larger guns here, these make excellent target guns because of the long barrel and you have a long sight radius. And a 357 Magnum cartridge, very, very good for target shooting. Plus you can put 38 specials in it and it'll be a very soft shooting, low recoil, especially with a big heavy gun like this. This is a 686 and 6-inch. This is a stainless gun, Smith & Wesson, in 6-inch. And then when you have your duty weapons, the cops and the law enforcement, they used to carry more like the little 4-inch ones like this. This is also a 686 and 4-inch stainless one. So you got your 4-inch ones here. This is your 586. The only difference in that one is the finish. This is carbon steel with the blue finish on them. And you have your top two ones that are 6-inch ones. It could be more like your home defense or your target shooting ones and all that. These would be easier to carry on your side than it would be the two larger 6-inch ones here. Now, in the middle ones, you have the two Colts, and the Colt Python is probably the most famous 357 Magnum revolver, and people that don't know about history thinks that that was the one that started it all, and it wasn't, folks. It was Smith & Wesson. It was started 20 years before this Colt Python ever came out. But anyway, folks, I just wanted to go over a little bit of history and some of the uses that a 357 Magnum has. I mean, it's a very, very hot round. It's a very good self-defense gun. I mean, very good. You can use it for hunting. You know, you can hunt small game. You can actually hunt deer with these things. People have done that because it's such a powerful round. And like I said, 1,200 to 1,600 feet per second. I mean, it is moving. Very loud round, very powerful round. And all these guns here are very versatile because they can shoot the less powerful and more pleasant to shoot 38 specials. But anyway, folks, just wanted to run through a little bit of history about the 357 Magnum cartridge, and it's been in service since 1935 until present day. If you have any questions on it, I'm not an expert or anything, but I'd be happy to go over anything that you ask me. If you have any questions on any of these weapons here, I have separate videos on every single one of them, going in depth about every one of them. So look up on my channel, look at the videos, and tell me what you think. And thank you very much for watching my video today, folks. You folks have a great day.